President Biden formally announced his 2024 reelection bid just moments ago. Let's watch.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election. Because I know America. I know we're good and decent people. I know we're still a country that believes in honesty and respect and treating each other with dignity. That we're a nation where we give hate no safe harbor. We believe that everyone is equal, that everyone should be given a fair shot to succeed in this country.
Thank you for choosing us.
Every generation of Americans has faced a moment when they have to defend democracy. Stand up for our personal freedom. Stand up for the right to vote and our civil rights. And this is our moment.
Here to discuss is 2024 presidential candidate and challenger for the Democratic nomination, Marianne Williamson. Marianne, thank you so much for joining Rising this morning.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So polls show that many voters are not enthusiastic about a potential Biden-Trump rematch. What do you have to say to all those people out there who have fatigue about the idea of Biden running again and being up against Donald Trump?
Well, the DNC should take those people's voices very, very seriously. I think given that video that you just showed, any Democrat should be very concerned because that video does not show an administration in touch with the American people. The president said that his administration has been giving everybody a fair shot. But say that to the people who are wondering why, in fact, we haven't raised the minimum wage, why they didn't permanentize the child tax credit, why he didn't stand for the railroad workers against the railroad bosses. I think that video is very out of touch, and that's what people are feeling. I think that video shows I think an entire younger generation would stay home in droves in response to what that video is advancing as the administration's pitch to the American people. The DNC should listen to those voices, to those high percentages, 51% of Democrats, 70% of Americans who say they want another possibility other than the president. And that's why it's so important that the DNC have debates and allow those of us, Bobby Kennedy and myself, to debate the president, because this is an important time for us to really consider what do we need to present to the American people in order to beat the Republicans in 2024.
Now, of course, since the last time we spoke, RFK Jr. has also entered the race. And just this morning, he was tweeting his criticism of the Democratic Party's failure to have a primary debate. And his tweets were co-signed by none other than Elon Musk. Elon Musk, of course, attracts quite a bit of attention on Twitter. How are you thinking about RFK's entry into the race? And do you think it will help you make the case for why Biden's challengers need to have more grace shown to them by the Democratic Party, be supported more by the Democratic Party, or shall I say not be locked out by the Democratic Party? Or do you see it as drawing away from the message that you're trying to speak to the American people?
Unlike the DNC, I stand for democracy everywhere, not just as a goal, but as a process. And if Bobby Kennedy feels moved to join the race, which obviously he has, I welcome him. This is what democracy is. Bobby's ideas and mine intersect in quite a few places and don't intersect in other places. This should be a debate. It should be Bobby Kennedy. It should be myself. It should be the president. And it should be anyone else who joins. Like I said, we need to discuss what is the right agenda and what is the right person to take on the Republicans in 2024. This should not be a decision that is just dictated by the establishment elite at the DNC.
What do you think the DNC is so afraid of, deciding there should not be debates?
Excellent point. First of all, they should not be wary of democracy if, in fact, they claim to be the protectors of democracy. What they're afraid of is that the American people would look at another candidate and go, yeah, we actually think that would be the better person to run. The issue, we have two issues here. Number one, what's the best person and the best agenda to take on the Republicans in 2024? And also, what is the best agenda and the best person to lead this country into a fundamental economic reform, which is what I'm presenting, as opposed to the incremental approaches of the president. We have different agendas. Joe Biden has his. I have mine. If the American people, the Democratic voters, or those who would be voting in that primary specifically, listen to the president's agenda and say, we want him, then it should be the president who is the nominee. But the people should decide, not the DNC. They should not be trying to shoehorn this president into the nomination.
Marianne, do you have a plan to get around the DNC's decision not to host debates, challenging Biden outside of the context of the DNC, hosting a separate debate with RFK Jr. and any other candidates that enter the race, for instance?
I think right now what I'm most trying to do, and everywhere that I campaign, right now I'm in Michigan. I spoke at Michigan State last night. When I'm campaigning, I make it clear to the voters that you yourselves are going to have to demand a debate. We campaign. There is a universe outside the grip of the DNC. On the other hand, the DNC is already showing its kind of iron hand here. There are places where I'm invisibilized, or a real effort to sort of unperson any other candidate than the president. This idea that no one but him is a serious candidate. I'll tell you what I'm serious about. I'm serious about the 68,000 people who die every year from lack of health care. I'm serious about the 1 in 4 Americans who are living with medical debt. I'm serious about the fact that a president who says that climate change is an existential crisis has given more oil drilling permits even than Trump did, has approved the Willow Project, and now approved exportation of liquefied natural gas. I think that I'm a far more serious candidate for this moment in our history than the president is.
One of your fellow candidates, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., actually hit out at Fox News yesterday after the news that Tucker Carlson was being ousted. He said, quote, Tucker told the truth about how greedy pharma advertisers controlled TV news content. For many years, Tucker has had the nation's biggest audience, averaging 3.5 million, 10 times the size of CNN. Fox just demonstrated the terrifying power of big pharma. You responded, tweeting, quote, Tucker Carlson is no hero. Wanted to give you the opportunity to expand on, what you were getting at there and react, obviously, to this pretty big news.
As any Democrat knows, Tucker Carlson has made many racist comments, has made many comments that are an offense to the traditional values of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, it is this interesting place that a lot of folks have been in where there are folks that identify broadly with the left, like Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore, who have offered limited praise of Tucker Carlson and his decision, at very least, to allow them to share his platform to talk about issues like Julian Assange or anti-war issues, things
sometimes not
like.
So limited praise, honestly.
Yeah, to be honest. And that has caused them to be seen in a certain light by other members of the left community, for sure. And I wonder how I'll say this. I do think that there is a way that they have been able to broaden their audience, for better or for worse, by having an openness to people who differ in meaningful ideological ways and moral ways, in the ways that you've pointed out, without necessarily coming down so strongly on them in a kind of more absolute way. As someone who is seeking the presidency and has to figure out how to put together a pretty big tent of voters and who might have some advantages with independent voters, let's say in a general election context, how would you negotiate that tension between, yes, the kinds of things that Tucker Carlson has said, which are racist and distasteful and the like, and the choices that some people on the left have made to make kind of this limited partnership with him to take advantage of his audience and his reach, et cetera?
Look, what you call this tension is the vitality of democracy. And you're absolutely right. These hardline silos do not really apply. Even Eisenhower said the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. Some people agree with Tucker Carlson about one thing and totally disagree on another. You're right about Julian Assange, and I agree that Julian Assange must be let out of Belmarsh prison. And Tucker Carlson has also, in his views, displayed something very, very interesting. There there is on the right as well on the left a growing aversion to the overreach by corporate entities. So you're right. There have been some times where he has stood for the people against corporate interests. There have been other times, or against an overreach by corporate interests. And that does display that the old, and that's what I felt about that video. That video applies to an America in 1995. Some new things new dynamics are emerging. And you're right. The idea that if you're blue, you think this. If you're red, you think that. No candidate who is really in touch with what's happening with the American people today is speaking to that. We're speaking to a new Americanism. I know I am. I think people on the left as well as on the right know that when it comes to the economic despair, when it comes to the rigged system that people live at the effect of in far too many cases in this country, something has gone too far. There are Republicans who know this. There are Democrats who know this. There are independents who know this. And absolutely, I'm seeing all of them at my campaign events.
Marianne, do you have any interest in running third party if, as you say, that the DNC is just not at all accommodating to any potential dissent or challenge to Joe Biden?
I'm going to do whatever I can as a citizen and as a candidate to keep the fascists out of the White House in 2024. I will do whatever that means.
Marianne, some people would say that sounds like the kind of language that folks use, generally speaking, when they ultimately say, well, we don't want Trump to win or we don't want whatever Republican to win, so we're ultimately going to encourage folks to vote for the Democratic candidate. And a lot of folks on the left are very frustrated with Bernie Sanders, for instance, for ultimately doing what they describe as sheep herding people back into the Democratic Party at the end of the day. And they see some progressive efforts as giving some voice to progressive concerns, but ultimately making sure they stay within the Democratic Party stable. You know, is that what you're saying? And if so, what do you say to folks who are over that style of politics?
Well, first of all, some people would take what I said as meaning that. Some people would take what I just said as the exact opposite to that. And for that matter, you know, you can say an incremental approach. This is how I look at it. The Republicans don't even pretend. You know, they give crumbs to the American people. The Democrats, the corporatist Democrats, give cookies. Well, you can't live on cookies either. On the other hand, you know, this is a pretty good decision, an important decision to make, a question to ask ourselves. Is a little bit of help at the end better than no help, given that still means millions of people who are helped? What I said does not mean that at the end of the day I would necessarily go with the Democratic Party. What I said does not mean that at the end of the day I would not. It means that at the end of the day I will do what my heart tells me to do at that time, should that time comes. Right now I'm planning to win the nomination.
Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.